Is this how the deal with the Tommy Boy Black label comes about?
Oh yeah, 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 definitely, definitely. So yeah, Chris Atlas, he got wind of this stuff, and he came to us and presented something to us. So I mean, at the time what we were doing, because it worked, it coincided with our independent move. So we did a little deal with him, you know.
Right. You also released some more singles prior to the debut. So Sean Don, is you D reaction?
Sean Don, yeah. So yeah, Sean. Listen, because the way it is, the way the Spin and I work was like this. Any given moment, right? If you hear one song from us, there's probably about five or six behind it. Like
Mm,
we work in groups like that. Like, just that's how we were doing our demos, because it would show the growth or what direction what we were feeling at the time. We'd make like a cluster of music, and then, all right, cool, let's jump on another vibe, make another cluster of music, jump on another vibe. So um Sean Don, like I mean, the main thing that we were trying to convey with the way we were doing sound, we kind of wanted to have like a definitely musical, um spacey type of movement, right? We wanted these big sounding songs with psychedelic type of undertones, spaced out zone shit, right? And me just flowing. We just, we had that those formula we wanted, this consistent bounce flow on top of these melodies. And Sean Don was definitely one of those type of things. And he flipped the ill sampler in that too. I'm not gonna say what the sample is, but that was a popular record for us growing up in the '80s. For us, if you know, you know.
right.
So Spinner flipped it in a way that was like, wow, it was showing his skills on the production side.
Right. What eventually happened to the deal at the Tommy Boy Black label?
I mean, you know, the at that point, deals weren't really like, the way the music industry, that was like beginning the shifting of the music industry, like a little bit, you know. So it's like we felt they wanted a lot without giving up much. And then Tommy Boy was going through something too. So, we weren't pressed with them like that. We were more concerned with the independent movement, because we were already touring. We were in France, we were in Japan, we were in, you know, Germany and all these places a couple times a year, you know, Australia, stuff like that. So we weren't really pressed about that deal. We were just like, all right, we want to keep relevant in terms of if we can get some major exposure. But,
Right.
you know, we were never signed to an album deal with them. We were always like with the option for albums, and we just kept that option going until we didn't really do it.
Right. Do you guys consider Grassroots Lyrical Fluctuation your debut, or kind of a teaser prior to the debut?
Nah, I mean, well, I think at the time we were like, we didn't have, um Spinner didn't want to put out a full album yet, and we had the material, but the thing is, he was just like, yeah, let's give people a teaser for the major. It's like, back in the days things work a little different. Now people drop everything, and or they consistently hit you with stuff. Back then they tease you on people, waited like, oh, I can't wait for that to drop. So we were still operating on that type of formula at that time. Um, so Grassroots was definitely like a tease, because what it was, we were dropping singles so much. We were dropping a couple of singles, so we was like, we want to show people like, yo, listen, we're not just all about singles. We got material, so let's give them this EP initially before we give them the album.
Right. Now, at this time, are you seeing that the independent route is working, or are you guys still kind of waiting on the best major label deal?
I mean, if you got the right major label deal, you always jump to it, right? Because that's the major exposure. but we were operating on the independent thing because we were doing so much independent wise. And like I said, it was like the new movement, man. It was a new wave. And some of the guys that had major deals were doing it, like the people on that record. We had Pharaoh, we had Yassine, um, Kweli,
Most
Complex.
Def.
Yeah, yeah. So Complex, and we had Shabam Sadiq on that. So those were all guys that were signed to like or was dealing with Raucus or whatever. Everybody had their own little thing going on.
Right.
So it was just the time for that.
Right. What do you remember most about that session with all those guys? Complex, Most Def, Sadiq,
Well,
Talib.
the weird thing about it, so I was just talking to my man Jock Max about this because Jock Max, part of Dome Crackers, he's out of Kansas, and he's the one that produced the original Lyrical Fluctuation. Spinner has the remix, and he has the original. Um, the only thing was, I think, when he sent the original, he just did the main patterns of it. Spinner flipped the patterns crazy on it too, though. But he, so he sends the beat, and I'm like, all right, cool, man. I'm definitely gonna rock this. So I was actually Spin and I were getting ready to go to France, and he had a session with Pharaoh Monch. So Pharaoh was listening to a bunch of beats, and that beat came across, and Pharaoh was like, "I'm getting on that. I'm getting on this beat. What's that beat?" I was like, "Well, that's John. I'm working." He's like, "I'm getting on that." And Pharaoh, he lays down the illest verse. That's to me, that's one of the illest verses in rap ever. The shit Pharaoh says on that verse is phenomenal. A lot of people, I don't know if people, go back and peep it because it's not a regular verse. So he's actually the first one to lay it down. So I was like, damn, I actually was leaving on the flight. So I was like, I whatever he did, I don't know if Spinner, I think Spinner like kept it. So while we were overseas, I was listening to a couple of times while I was crafting my verse. So I was like, oh man, this shit's crazy. So I said,
Mhm.
I'm gonna open it, and blah blah blah. So I came up with the chorus. I came up with when I was overseas in France at the time. So by the time I came back, with Spinner, I think like we came back during midweek. I went home, whatever. I said I'll come lay it down probably on the weekend, whatever. By the time I came back on the weekend, Kweli was on it. So Spinner was like, I played for Kweli. Kweli was like, yo, I gotta jump on that, blah blah blah. So Kweli jumped on the joint, and I'm like, oh shit. So at that point, Complex at the time, Complex, because he's pretty tight with Pharaoh. He was like, oh, I got my verse for it, and then he laid his verse for it. So I laid mine down. So we weren't in the studio at the same time. Everybody has different times laying these verses. So by the time I laid mine down, I laid the hook, blah blah blah. Um, we had a session coming with Shabam. Shabam was doing finishing up his work, and Spinner was like, "Yo, you want to put Bam on it?" I was like, "Yeah, definitely put Bam on that." Tell Bam to close it out. And Bam heard it and was like, "Oh shit, everybody's on this. I got to get on it." And then did his verse on it. So that's how that record formulated. It was like kind of like it's very organic because it wasn't a planned record. It wasn't planned at all, and it ended up turned out being really dope. So I appreciate that. That was really like on people legitimately feeling the vibe or feeling the beat and whatever. That was like, yo, I got to do it. I got to do it. You know.
Right.
So that was blessed.
Very dope. What do you remember the reaction being like for Grassroots once it dropped?
Oh, it was pretty good. I was in the studio. I remember one time we was in the studio with 88 Keys, and he was like, "Yo, man," he's like, "Yo, this stuff is so like," he said, "it's so unfiltered and fresh, man. This is like," he's like, "This is where it's at right now." I remember Sean J. Period giving me some good feedback on it too. So it was dope. I appreciate it. Amongst my peers, a lot of the rappers and the producers, they was like, "Wow, man, this is really dope." So that meant a lot to me, because it's people I admired and I looked up to. So that was fire.
Right. With that circulating, are the major labels knocking at this time?
I don't think they were crazy knocking, but yeah, we had some interests, one or two interests, yeah. Like, what do you guys want to do? Blah, blah, blah. But at that point, I think, it was hard to get people that were really serious because they really, it was coming out of that time where, you know, it's coming out of that time where it was kind of the end of the Biggie stuff, and the way the labels were moving was just different.
Hmm.
Prior to, like, when Nas, Biggie, and Pac, they had different budgets, and the way those deals were set up was just different. Like, the way, like, Jay-Z came in after a little after all that with his independent move, because he was an independent movement as well. So that was just like a new wave going on. So the deals were like kind of like people were scared to spend money. They was like, where's hip hop going? Where's it going on this? Blah, blah, blah. So it wasn't like crazy opportunity like that. Especially when they seen the independent movement doing what they were doing. They was like, shit, these guys are taking money out of our pockets. What are we doing? How do we shape this?
Right.
So that was the move back then.
So around this time, a little bit outside the Jig Masters, what features are you on, and what artists are you working with?
Oh, okay. So I did some overseas stuff, a lot of overseas stuff. I did my boys over at Grand Central, who was Mark Ray and them, those guys brought us to the UK for the first time. They brought us over there like twice. And and we did a massive tour with them all through England. Um he had a nice movement going on. So, I ended up doing a record with my man, Only Child, one of his artists, which is a cool record. Um, uh, we did a Next Man remix was another dope set of producers. Um, I ended up doing, I ended up working with Groove Armada. Those guys are out of the UK too. They're kind of big on the indie scene. Um, I did some stuff with Soul Records out in Scotland. I did across the globe. I did a UK release that did pretty well over there as well. That while Beyond Real was kicking up a storm over here, they had another record by us, and it didn't go under Jig Masters. It went under JIGs
Hmm.
because of the Tommy Boy situation at the time. So we did a little different move with it. Um, yeah, we did a couple of things. I did something with Big Youth. I was on a couple of remixes, Cooley's Hotbox remixes. A lot of M People remixes, all that. Like we did a lot of like I did a lot of like eclectic stuff. Not traditional hip hop in some cases.
Right.
But it
This
was dope
time,
because it gave me like a different lane.
right, at that time, did you consider having a solo album?
Mm, not really. Not really. I've toyed with it before and said, oh, maybe I'll work with a bunch of different producers and come up with some different things, and it's still not a far fetched idea.
Right.
As you look for things to do to continue the creative process. Um, but I never really thought about it like that.
Right. 2001, you guys released Infectious. What was the recording process like for this one?
Oh man, that was pretty dope. That one, Spin and I, we locked down, man. We we attacked each song as each song. We didn't we created different spaces. Um, we had my man Dave Kennedy who mixed a lot of the brand Nubian stuff and some of the most depth Yasin Bey stuff. We were working with him in terms of getting the sound right and all that. Um, we had some really good input. Spinner and I took some time on that project and tried to, you know, try to put our true, you know, what Jig Masters really is, you know. And I think that conveyed who we are to this day pretty well. Um, but it was a chore.